Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teal. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on CareGiverSolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on Caregiver Solutions Info. This show is for you, the family caregiver. If you're dealing with caregiving issues, you're taking care of someone that has memory loss, that has Alzheimer's or other related dementia, this show is guaranteed to help you, to give you tips, and to give you information that could help you in your caregiving tasks and challenges. So I hope that you will share this information with anyone that you know that is having a hard time, wants to learn more about caregiving. We have a lot of professionals actually in the healthcare field that they tune into because they want to know more about what caregivers go through on a day-to-day basis. And so we actually touch on all these different topics. We have professionals in the healthcare field and other fields related to healthcare, such as elder law attorneys, social workers, geriatric care managers, nurses, a lot of different disciplines that come here to share their expertise to you, the caregiver. So we ask the questions and you get the answers. And I thank you for tuning in, whether you're listening on the local radio or on the website, caregiversolutions.info. So we have a great show again for you today. We are live out of Boca Raton, Florida. If you would like to hear something talked about, if you have a question, if you have a comment or a suggestion, I'd be very happy to hear from you. You can reach me via email. My email address is delray@arden-courts.com. Again, delray@arden, ARDEN-courts, COURTS.com. So send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I've heard from many people and have received some wonderful reviews and some questions that we've answered on the program in the past, and I'd love to hear from you also. So today we're going to be talking about something that seems to be somewhat confusing for the seniors and maybe their adult children when it comes to options of senior living. Senior living meaning housing when it's not in your own home. So we have the gamut between independent living, regular assisted living, buy-in communities, specialized assisted living, and nursing homes. And these are sometimes a little bit difficult to understand the differences, and we're here today to talk about those differences. We want to explore the differences between the options when it's appropriate for someone to live in one type of environment or another, and more importantly, when it's not appropriate for someone to live in a particular type of environment, especially when, as people age, they have certain cognitive impairments, maybe physical impairments that would maybe be better served in a different environment. And so I think that if we do an overview of this, it's going to help you as a family caregiver to understand maybe down the road what you need to be looking for. And when it comes to that, you'll understand better the questions to ask and how to go about that difficult task, because it is difficult when you're a caregiver and you're making those decisions either for a spouse or you're an adult child trying to make these decisions for an elderly parent, somebody that has memory loss that can't make these decisions for them. It's very important to have all the information that you need to make a good, solid, informed decision, and then everybody will be better served by that. So I'm very happy today to have with me Lisa Allicott. Lisa is the Director of Sales, and she is here in our studio with us. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Marcia. Nice to see you.
Thank you for coming in today.
And thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Lisa is with 5-star Premier Residences of Boca Raton, right here in beautiful Boca Raton, Florida. And Lisa, how long have you been in the senior housing industry?
I've been in the industry for 21 years.
So I think she's qualified to talk about senior housing. 21 years helping families make these decisions. It's a lot of information. And, you know, being in the field, and I'm in a memory care assisted living, of course, with Arden Courts for over 15 years, we learn a lot about what people don't know, and our job is to educate them and to give them the information that they need. So I want to thank you for what you do, because I know you're really good at it, and thank you for coming here today to help us explain all of this. So that being said, let's start, Lisa, first with independent living. Now, people have their own homes, they have their family. Sometimes they've lived in their own home for 40, 50 years. Why would somebody make a choice to go from their own home into an independent living? Because when you're in your own home, you are independent, right?
Right.
And you're going into an independent living in a community. Why would somebody make that decision?
The reason someone would make that decision is to actually keep them independent. The opportunity in an independent living retirement community gives you all the options of living at home with additional support, such as the restaurant is right in the building, the activities are located in the building, and you have a lot of options. Many of our residents that will choose independent living or thinking about independent living are active, they drive, they go out to lectures, they go out to play cards. What's nice about our type of community is those type of items that you're used to doing or that you used to do and stopped doing for different reasons, you can have that easily right in the building of where you're living.
So you said a lot of them drive, but one thing that I thought of is, what if somebody, for whatever reason, can't drive anymore? Maybe they have poor eyesight and maybe they shouldn't be driving. So that would be a great reason for someone to go into independent living, because they don't have to drive. Everything's right there for them. They have at their fingertips, you know, all the meals and all the preparations.
The best case scenario is someone that's looking ahead, that has had an active life, that wants to remain independent, and that way they're setting themselves up for success before there's an emergency, before there's a crisis. Obviously, a lot of times people do wait because they're not thinking of preparing for the next step in this light. They think, oh, I have to make a move because something has happened. Well, usually there is a change. Maybe there's a change in your spousal situation. Maybe you're not as busy as you used to be. Maybe you're not driving anymore. Maybe you're having a problem with your vision. Maybe your children do not live locally, and you just want to know that there's a resource for you that feels very comfortable and feels like it's your own home.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Right. So it sounds like an independent living is not to take away, your independence, but to enhance it.
All of senior living, independent living, regular living, memory care, any type of senior living environment, the whole idea is to have you remain as independent as you possibly can.
Right.
And then have the extra type of resources. For independent living specifically, housekeeping is included.
Right.
There's a concierge 24/7 at most communities. So just knowing that somebody is right there that you have access to just in case something happens, you don't feel alone.
And I'm so glad you said it that way. That was the perfect thread, because that thread of remaining independent no matter which type of community you're in is very true, because that's the goal. The goal is no matter what stage of life you're in, no matter what your needs are as life goes on, the idea is to keep you as independent as possible and to at least continue to enhance your quality of life. And
Right.
in a lot of cases, improve your quality of
Right.
life.
And for independent living specifically, we interview our residents, we find out what they like to do in advance, and we put together an activity program that gears towards their physical and emotional and spiritual self and intellectual self. We want to keep them as active, or probably more active than they've been.
Right.
And
I
that's
know-
the whole idea.
Right, that's great, because a lot of people, as they age also, they lose a lot of their social contacts. And this way, it's a great way for them to be able to participate in social events and not have to worry about there's no one's around. And I think you guys have wonderful parties and all kinds of social events that they can participate in. So that is something that a lot of people think, well, why do I go to independent? I'm independent here. And I think that was a very good explanation. But there comes a point in time when someone may not actually fit in an independent living situation in a community.
Right.
And there are things that are going to happen that might trigger them being in a different type of environment with different help because they have different needs. So can you explain what would happen if someone were in independent living that would trigger a change or a move over to the assisted living part, which is within the same community?
Sure. Independent living, as I had said, is a lot like living at home, except for you have extra amenities. In assisted living, there is somebody that is physically around, a staff member 24/7, that's checking in on the residents throughout the entire day, including putting together a specialized care plan for them. And what I mean by that is there could be a resident living in independent living, and some of the signs that we'll notice is that maybe somebody is not going to activities anymore, or they're coming out into the library and sitting by themselves. What you're finding is sometimes these residents, as much as they think they're independent, their family members think they're independent, they look like they're independent, their needs aren't really necessarily being met the best way. If somebody decides to move to assisted living, typically the area is a little bit smaller in terms of the community rooms, the restaurant, the activity rooms, where the concierge is.
A little easier to navigate.
Much easier to navigate. So what happens is it's easier to meet people. And I think when you put yourself in an environment where you are having a little more difficulty, either a little bit of memory problem or some physical problems, where you're finding that it's more difficult to come out of your apartment and be social, and an environment like regular assisted living, again, continues to enhance your independence, but gives you that backup when you need it, socially, physically, cognitively, even if it's just a very small thing, such as I have 3 pieces of mail and I feel very overwhelmed. You know, this is not necessarily something that would require a memory neighborhood, but this person is now still with people that are very high functioning, and their needs can be met. If you need maybe more help with showers
Or medications.
is
Right.
definitely a really good sign.
Yes.
Because what will happen is the family member or somebody will notice that the person in independent living, they're not acting the way that they used to act. Maybe they seem more forgetful. Maybe they didn't change their shirt. as I said, maybe they're looking a little bit more isolated.
Yeah, a little out of character.
Correct.
Yeah, and I love this because it's real important to look for those signs, and family members sometimes are the first ones to pick up on it, but sometimes they're the last ones to pick up on it, depending upon the situation. So we're going to cut to our first commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more with Lisa about the differences between regular assisted living from independent, and then what happens when you need to move on to the next step. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides.
Being unable to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know, we understand, we can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
Which we haven't gotten to yet, Lisa, but I want to talk a little bit more about the switchover. So when someone is in independent, we talked about how they might need to go to assisted because they need some more help. They need help with medications. They need help maybe with showering, making sure they get in and out safely out of the shower, for maybe some of the physical ailments that they might be experiencing. So now we've transitioned them into regular assisted living. And this gives them, like you said, a little bit smaller environment. It gives them a little bit more comfortable space with navigation, the support that they need to do those things. But you're still continuing to give them their independence, and you're still continuing to give them a quality of life. But we're talking about people that, for the most part, don't have any major cognitive impairments, certainly not Alzheimer's, but there is a point where there may be a trigger that the communities might say, and this would go for pretty much any community that has assisted living, that maybe this person now, for one reason or another, is no longer appropriate to be in regular assisted living. So I'd like to talk about that because sure. Being from the memory care assisted living, I get a lot of people when I say, Arden Courts is a memory care assisted living, and we do memory care. That's all we do, and we're a memory care community. But as soon as they realize that it's an assisted living, For memory care, a lot of people say, oh no, my husband could never live in an assisted living. He's got Alzheimer's. He could never. And I have to explain to them the difference between a regular assisted living, which is probably what they're thinking about, and a specialized dementia care assisted living. So you are in the regular assisted living world. So let's talk about those triggers. If someone was living in a regular assisted living, doesn't matter for how long, what would be some of the red flags that would identify them as possibly needing more care or more help?
Some of the red flags would be if we direct somebody into the restaurant to eat,
right,
and they sit down and then they come back up and they come back into the lobby, and it's like they completely forgot if they ate or if they didn't eat. So let's say that they sat down and they had lunch, and then they came out, or the caregiver brought them out, and they're either going to an activity or they're going to the lobby. And the worst thing you want to do is just have someone just go directly into their apartment unless they want to do that. And then all of a sudden they walk back into the restaurant and are ready to eat again. So that would definitely be an indication that they're not remembering. And on the flip side, if they are in the restaurant or the dining room, whatever you want to call it, and they're eating, but they're having a hard time with the knife and the fork, and maybe they're not using their utensils correctly, that would also be a red flag for us that they're having more cognitive issues, that they could be having more cognitive issues, and that really would be more appropriate for a memory neighborhood.
Okay.
I guess another indication would be somebody who is coming out of their apartment and just walking into other apartments. It's like they're wandering around aimlessly, not even necessarily walking out of the building. So walking out of the building would definitely...
Inappropriately visiting their neighbors in the middle of the night, right?
Yes.
And
for no reason.
Yeah, for no reason. It's not like they're borrowing a cup of sugar at 2 a.m.
Right. They're not coming to chit chat.
Right.
They don't know what they're doing. They're fidgety. An assisted living can provide, any regular assisted living can provide care with dressing, with bathing, with getting out of a chair, making sure that residents go to their meals and remind them to go to activities or encourage activities. But if you need someone on a one-to-one because that person's not really able to make the best decisions for themselves, either safety-wise or they just don't know where to go, that would be an area where we would probably call Marcia and give Marcia some. Actually, let me take a step back. We would talk with the family, and we would let them know what we're seeing. My guess is the family is seeing some of these items as well, and the family has some worry. So for us, we don't specialize in memory. We don't have a memory neighborhood at our community. So we want to make sure that our residents' needs are always being met, either in independent living, regular assisted living, or if we can't meet their needs, we want to send them over to a specialist that can, where their life can still be. They can be as independent as they can, but they have more care that can meet their needs specifically.
Very good. Thank you for explaining that. It was a great explanation. In a regular assisted living, you do start sometimes seeing those social behaviors that might not be appropriate anymore. People that have some memory issues, they're going to repeat themselves. They're going to forget their names of their table mates or their friends that they've known. And these types of things, by always repeating themselves or forgetting how to play cards. I know they might be playing, a card game, and all of a sudden they don't know what to do.
Correct.
What I have found by investigating this is that, unfortunately, people that are in assisted living that don't have these cognitive impairments, that don't have any memory loss, they actually start to ostracize against the other people and don't want to let them participate anymore. They don't fit in anymore. No, you can't play. I mean, what do you mean I can't play? I've been playing with you for the last 5 years. Well, no, you don't know how to play your hand, and you're going to mess us up. So all of a sudden, they've gotten the boot from their social environment there that they've had, which is sad but true.
Right. I think what happens is no matter where you're living, at home or in independent living or in regular assisted living, when you see people around you that are presenting themselves with more problems, more memory problems, or more physical problems, you don't necessarily feel comfortable with that.
Right.
You don't really know what to do.
Right.
You might be a nice person. You might want to include this person in the game, but clearly, if somebody is not able to follow along with the rest of the people that are there, especially in a card game, it can be very uncomfortable for everybody.
Yes.
And that, if somebody, as their needs have changed, as I had said, in independent living or regular assisted living, if you move to an environment where you have more people like yourself, you actually have more social ability. You have more people around. You have more accepting people in whatever that area is. And the worst scenario ever would be at home, to be isolated because your situation has changed.
Right.
To be in independent living, all of a sudden your situation has changed and you're not really doing what you used to be doing in independent living. And the same holds true for assisted living. Assisted living can really be very beneficial because there's staff there that's there to be of help, are overseeing 24/7. If you were living in independent living, and let's say you had a private caregiver for a couple hours a day, like maybe you would do at home in independent living, what happens is sometimes you don't want that person in your house for 4 hours, and you really don't even need that person. The same thing holds true for assisted living. When somebody's living in assisted living and their needs are not really being met in regular assisted living, maybe they have some safety awareness. Maybe they might, they're not able to use the toaster oven anymore in assisted living. Possibly the family member might hire in a private aide for an hour or two, but
Which is okay. That's acceptable.
That is okay, but is that really the best scenario?
Right.
In some ways, you're almost putting a Band-Aid on that situation because nobody wants to believe that their family member's situation has changed, and it does. Good, bad, or indifferent, that's what happens. So if somebody's showing signs of increased dementia or Alzheimer's, their needs aren't necessarily being met the best in assisted living, regular assisted living, because the day programming isn't 24/7 in terms of the caregivers.
And it's not also geared, the programming and activities are not geared to the person with dementia because they can't remember current events, let's say.
Correct.
And they're not really able to participate in current events or remember maybe current data. And so they're going to fail at some of the games, some of the programs are going to be failing. And so what will happen in regular assisted living with people that have this this dementia, mild cognitive impairment, which we'll talk about. I know certainly people that live in regular assisted living can have some mild cognitive impairment. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's, progressed on to dementia or Alzheimer's, but they begin to be aware themselves that they can't do the things they used to do, and they'll withdraw and they'll hibernate into their little apartment in the regular assisted living because they do not want to put themselves in a situation where they'll be embarrassed by saying the wrong thing or not doing the right thing, because there is a point in time where the person with dementia understands that they can't control what's going on in their brain, and they get frightened, and so they know enough at some point that they're vulnerable and they're scared, so they're going to withdraw from those situations. And you will find, as I'm sure you do, people that do start hibernating and withdrawing from those social events, and that would be another red flag.
Correct.
Yeah.
And as I said, we always want to be able to meet the needs of a resident. We don't want somebody living in our community that we're really not able to benefit them. We want and we expect, we want to do the best for the resident. We want to have the residents' needs being met. And if they need the type of programming that a memory neighborhood provides, which is the entire day, everything is geared towards memory, that would be the type of resident that even if I'm meeting with, I would talk with the family and say, I think that they would have their needs met better in a memory neighborhood.
It's probably a hard conversation that you have to have with those families because, like you said, a lot of family members are in denial, especially ones that don't live in town, that don't visit that often, and they don't see all of these things. And, you're having to explain this to them. And I'm sure that it's hard for a family to hear that, mom doesn't really fit in here anymore. And you tell them why. And that's what it's all about, is educating them to give mom the best environment that she possibly could have.
Right, and that's the relationship that we have with all of our family members. We have an open door policy, and our nurses or our nurse manager, we are constantly in contact with our family members. We let them know what concerns we have. The family members are visiting, and our goal together as a team is just to make sure that their family members' needs are being met. There's times for example, I actually had a phone call yesterday where a woman is the caregiver of her husband, and he clearly has memory needs. He's pretty isolated, and the two of them together are really just the team. Well, this is a woman who's completely high functioning and isn't doing anything but being the caregiver to her husband, and she self-admits this. I don't believe that there's a caregiver at home. So she's talking about, she said to me, I'm thinking about moving into assisted living with my husband. And by asking a lot of questions and trying to have this family member feel comfortable with disclosing some of her concerns, the main concern was, when I go out for a couple hours, I want to make sure that somebody's watching my husband.
Who has Alzheimer's,
who I can't leave alone. And I stopped right there and I said, I don't know how comfortable you are with me saying this, but I think that your husband really needs a memory neighborhood. I think it's great that you want to be with him. And of course, the wife said to me, well, can I live with him? And I said, well, you can, but you're not going to have people on your cognition level. You're not going to have activities for yourself for your own stimulation. And if your husband is living in a memory neighborhood, all of his needs are going to be met. You're not going to have to worry about leaving him alone because he's never alone in a memory neighborhood.
Right.
So this is someone who called me directly to possibly move into my community, and I didn't feel that it was the right situation for them.
And that is a great example, because I get those phone calls too, where you have a caregiver who wants to move into regular assisted, has a spouse who has dementia. But what's going to happen? They're going to help me. I'm going to get my meals. I'm going to get housekeeping. I don't have to do that. But guess what? That caregiver is still the primary caregiver. That caregiver is still in charge and responsible for that person, that spouse who has dementia, because like you said, no one else is going to be watching him with what he needs and directing him and with all the little things that he might need with specific to his dementia issues. And so by going from your home into either independent living or regular assisted living with a spouse that has Alzheimer's, that caregiver is still caregiving and still responsible. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be a good solution, because it's not taking the stress off of that caregiver. Matter of fact, it's not allowing them the freedom, as you said in your example, to go and do what they need to do.
And also in that scenario, a lot of times the healthier spouse gets sicker because they have a lot on their mind, they have a lot on their plate. They now have to do everything, for the house or for their spouse, for themselves, for their own doctor's visits. And it's not unusual, unfortunately, that the healthier spouse ends up becoming sick. What happens in this case scenario where this healthy spouse has a situation, has to go to the hospital? Is her husband really going to be able to stay at home by himself? That would be an awful situation if he wasn't already in a community where his needs were being met.
Exactly. Perfect example. I love this. This is great stuff. We're going to go to commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking more about this with Lisa, and stay tuned. We'll be right back.